Hello and welcome to episode 42 of the Crash and Ride podcast. I'm Patrick Ferguson. I'm your host. Today's guest is Timi Conley. Timi Conley is the guitar player and singer in the Athens band Timi Conley and the Wonderland Rangers. Before that, he was in the band Kite to the Moon, and before that, he was in the much-beloved Athens band the Fuzzy Sprouts. Timi is also the founder of the week-long Bacchanalian Halloween party in Athens that we call the Wild Rumpus. The Wild Rumpus is a series of shows and events that culminates in an enormous Halloween parade that just snakes through the streets of Athens, and it's this amazing party. If you've never been to it, you should come next year. It's really worth the time to come see this amazing spectacle. Timi's also a fine art painter, and he's someone I've known for many years and I'm tremendously fond of. If this is your first episode of Crash and Ride is a long-form interview podcast where I talk to musicians who've survived anxiety, depression, and addiction. The idea was that if we could have open and honest conversations among musicians about the things we've been through, what it was like, what happened, what we're like now, we could start to get better because we could see our own suffering and the suffering of others, and we could talk about what we did to get better. As I've said many times on this program and others, no one is going to take care of us but us. And I got to say, I think it's helping. I get emails all the time from listeners who say things like, well, I didn't know about this ketamine nasal spray, and I went and talked to my doctor, and he gave it to me, and I don't want to kill myself anymore. We talked about ketamine as a treatment for people who are therapy and drug-resistant and suffering from depression on episode 10. That was last spring. I've heard a lot of great things from people who heard that episode and went and got some help. And I've heard people say, well, I heard episode number 1 and realized I wasn't the only person in the world who was struggling with obsessive anxiety. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to be a peer group and a support group for musicians and help each other out. And also, I don't talk about this a lot, but I feel like mental health stuff is something we've been sort of trained not to talk about, especially in the professional setting. And I feel like a lot of that stigma is fading. But just this week, I heard the story. It was a friend of mine who's a session musician, and he had worked with some other people, in professional capacity, and he was going through some shit, and he tried to keep it on the DL and be professional about it, but sometimes things kind of creep out. And apparently, they've been walking around the town where they live talking shit. I think that guy's emotionally unstable. Hey, first of all, number one, fuck you. If this whole thing of other people having feelings is hard for you, I got a suspicion that maybe your music isn't that insightful or deep. So maybe go be a praise and worship director or something. Get the fuck out of music. And second of all, if we can't talk about what we're going through, then we're going to have a lot of conversations at wakes and funerals. So those of you who are going through stuff, talk about it. Talk about it to people like me who you can trust. Find your peer group and don't bottle that shit up. And if, like I said, if you're some normie who thought maybe getting a cowboy hat and a guitar would make you an Americana writer, but people having feelings is hard for you, fuck off. I am not apologetic about my contempt for people who shame people for having honest conversations about mental health. Seriously, I will fight you. Okay, a couple of quick announcements. Crash and Ride is brought to you in part by Greer Amplification. Greer Amps builds the best boutique effects pedals available. If you're looking for an overdrive, boost, fuzz, compressor, or tremolo that is rugged, road-tested, and at home, on stage, in the studio, or in your living room, Greer has a pedal for you. Nick and his staff strive to build the best products around with the best tone you've ever heard. They believe in their products, and they stand behind them too, backing each one up with a lifetime warranty to the original owner. Each Greer Amps product is hand-built in Athens, Georgia, USA. Go to www.greeramps.com or visit your favorite music retailer today. I'm sure some of you are thinking, man, you should name names. You should talk about whoever is talking shit about someone who had an episode of depression on the road, but my buddy wouldn't tell me who it was. Believe me, I would name names and shame people for being shitty like that, but my buddy knew I'd do it, and he wouldn't tell me. Okay. Crash and Ride is also brought to you in part by Jittery Joe's, a local coffee roaster based in Athens, Georgia. They have an espresso blend named after the podcast. You can get Crash and Ride espresso, whole bean or ground, off our website at crashandridepodcast.com/store. We also have t-shirts there that help us pay for the expenses of having a podcast. We have blue and black t-shirts that have the Loud Guitars Save Lives slogan on them with the big Crash and Ride logo. Got them in women's sizes and men's sizes. They look great. They feel great. They're good t-shirts. They're only $20. So go to crashandridepodcast.com/store. All right, so today's guest is Timi Conley. Timmy's a really sweet guy. He's been around Athens since about 1991 or two. We talk about that some in the interview. We met on his first night out in Athens. He went to the Downstairs, which was a great underground bar. And by underground, I mean actually literally like down a flight of steps under the pavement here in Athens. And it was where a lot of great music got its start. Timi talked real honestly about his dad's kind of mania, his kind of bipolar thing. And he talked about the eventual death of his mom and what a blow that was to him. And just how hard it has been for him to sort of beat back some of his demons and have successful relationships. He's struggling with a little bit of that right now. I thought it was a really good conversation. I do have one more thing I want to say about this thing that's gotten under my skin so bad this week. If you're a musician who hires musicians, or you're a music director in a band, or you're a band manager or something, and you make it your business to go around shaming someone for actively dealing with their depression and taking it head on, and make it harder for them to get work by talking to other musicians about their struggle, just next time, just put a gun up to their head and pull the trigger. You may as well. I mean, this is some like old school, old music industry, 70s baby boomer shit. And man, it just drives me a little bit crazy that like we've lost so many great musicians just this year. I mean, David Berman, Neil Casale, not to mention like just the past, like Ronnie Montrose, Chris Cornell, Chester Bennington, Avicii. This list is just endless. And if you get a little like adrenaline zip from talking shit and it makes you feel important to judge people, Jesus Christ, man, just fuck off. So frustrating. Well, let's jump on our interview with Timi Conley. Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's actually good for me to have these on, the headphones.
Yeah, so you know whether you're like drifting off the mic or not.
Well, that and I might mention this later too if it comes up, but I have misophonia.
I don't know what that is.
It's a trigger of when sounds trigger you, and one of the triggers for me is trickling water, which that fish tank over there is kind of
yeah. Have you heard the Dopey podcast?
Mm-mm.
Dopey podcast is a guy named David. He had a partner named Chris in the beginning, and they were set up at David's dad's house in Manhattan. The Dopey podcast was about drugs, drug stories, and dumb shit. That was by their description. In the first few episodes, I was listening and I kept like looking to find out what was leaking in my house. And finally, about episode 3, they mentioned that there was a fish tank.
Oh,
I didn't get a fish tank because I felt like I needed to have a podcast. I just happened to have my daughter wanted a fish really bad, so we had a fish.
Yeah.
All right. I think we can probably jump in. You ready?
Let's do.
All right. Move my coffee off my notes here. When you say it's a trigger, what is it? You say,
like you hear the sound and then it immediately brings up negative emotion.
Oh.
Could be like anything from like rage, anger is typical.
Yeah.
So that's what I get.
You know, beavers have a very strong cortisol reaction to the sound of running water, which is why they build dams. Did you know that?
Did not know that.
They like. I'm trying to imagine them like taping a bunch of electrodes to a beaver.
I know. How did they figure that out?
I took that information at face value when I read it on the internet, and who knows if it's actually true now that I think about it. But someone told me that beavers have a panic reaction to the sound of running water, and I guess if you live in a house that's
reaction
surrounded by cortisol is the stress hormone.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah.
To a strong cortisol reaction to the sound of running water, which I guess if your house was made out of sticks and surrounded by water, yes, it'd be kind of like you or my reaction to the smell of smoke in a house.
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh shit, my house is about to go away.
Yep.
Yeah. So, do you have any idea why you're triggered by running water?
No. Are we taping, by the way?
I mean, I always turn it on.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, interestingly, I've done a million kinds of healing work in my life. I've basically, like, anytime some sort of healing work was offered to me, I've said yes. Mm-hmm. So, it's been a total adventure, and I've done so many things in so many ways, and I've tried to get at that several times, like, and it's always comes up blank. Like, I haven't been able to get it. It's one of the very few things that's just like been immutable in my pursuit of mental health. Very odd.
All right, let's jump. Let's contextualize all this talk.
Good.
All right, I'm here with Timi Conley. I know Timi originally from the band The Fuzzy Sprouts. Moved here in what, 92, 91?
91.
Yeah. After that, Kite to the Moon. Also Timi Conley and the Wonderland Rangers, which is your current project.
Yeah.
Also the founder of the Wild Rumpus Parade, which is becoming like Athens' version of Mardi Gras, the Halloween parade here in Athens.
Yes.
I talked about that a lot right before it happened here. There was an article on one of the big travel websites, like, if you're going to go to Athens, Georgia, Halloween week is the time to go.
Man. Wow.
Imagine being the person who founded Mardi Gras. Like, 20 years from now, they'll be like, there was some guy, he was this, like, creative, crazy person, genius, and he started this parade, but, like, I don't remember his name or whatever.
Yeah, right. I think I need to go down there and study how they do that.
How they do Mardi Gras?
Learn about how they do it. Learn about how they fund it. I need to know about the funding and stuff like that, nuts and bolts stuff.
It's like the city, I think, provides all the barricades and, like, double and triples the amount of police on the streets. And
do you remember bailing me out of jail in Mardi Gras?
I do. I had forgotten about it. And for years, I would make jokes on stage in New Orleans.
Yeah.
Because Howlin' Wolf down there, when we would play there were Mardi Gras style barricades right in front of the stage. And I would go to the microphone. We took a quick set break, and I'd be like, "You want to hear my impersonation of a New Orleans cop?" They'd be like, "You boys get off that barricade now. Hey, you want to go to jail too?"
Nice.
That's what happened to you, right? You guys?
Pretty much, yeah. We climbed on top of a building to watch the Zulu parade and got hauled off, and then...
Yeah.
This is why I say 5'8" is the best band in Athens, because nobody else bailed me out of jail in New Orleans at Mardi Gras. It was 5'8".
You
guys used your band funds and busted us out.
Yeah.
I will never forget that.
So who else?
Me and Michael Wagner.
Was it Wagner too?
Angie Grass.
Oh man.
Yeah. There was at least 4 of us.
I think it was Dave Demisi that let me know that you were all locked up.
That's correct.
He came to me and said they got in trouble. They got on a roof. There were no signs that said "Don't get on this roof." But
yeah, we climbed a fire escape.
Oh, I didn't know that part.
Yeah, we sure did. And Dave was my one call from jail. That was my call. And I was like, "Dude, I'm in jail in New Orleans." He's like, "No way, no fuck." And then I guess you had called in just to the house because y'all were living together.
We were living together. And if you're going to get one call in jail, you could do a lot worse than Dave Demisi, because that guy, he would move heaven and earth to help a friend. He's a wonderful person.
Y'all got it worked out, man.
Yeah.
We didn't spend the night thanks to you.
And it's easy to do. In New Orleans, when they start throwing people in jail at Mardi Gras, a lot of people sit there until Monday, or at least the following weekend. We could go down a rabbit hole about, like, the nitro fuel in American capitalism being chattel slavery, and the fact that the South is so conservative because capital hasn't forgotten that relationship and is still very nostalgic about it. But that's that's probably, we only have a little bit of time here. So, all right. So all these bands: Fuzzy Sprouts, Kite to the Moon, Wonderland Rangers, also founder of the Wild Rumpus. But ever since I met you, you've been a fine art painter too.
Yeah, here and there. I mean, that was my university degree.
Where'd you go to school?
UMass.
Amherst?
Yeah.
What's the name of that hotel there that used to have punk shows at? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I do. That was in Northampton.
Yeah, that's it. Northampton.
We'll have to Google that one. Hampshire Inn or something?
Something. We played there with Rodan from Louisville, and Jason from Rodan, who was a wonderful guy. Later, he maybe 15 years later, he died of cancer. He was a really great guy. said the kindest thing to me after that show. It's one of the things that kept me going for a long time. So you went there for college?
Yeah, and in fact, I mean, probably the legacy of UMass Art School like continues on because, you know, here's me like in my senior year of high school, and my mom was like, "You have to apply to some colleges." I was like, "I don't know." And she's like, "What about UMass?" And I said, it had a reputation as a party school, and I was like, "I don't want to go to a party school." And she said, "Just apply." And so I did, and I got in, and I ended up going, and of course I ended up partying a whole bunch. And then we ended up having some legendary Halloween parties at UMass.
So Halloween's always been a big deal for you.
Yeah, since then, yeah. And then, I mean, then of course, like I came down to Athens, and in 91, we did a Halloween show, Fuzzy Sprouts and Loggerhead at Club Fred. And like, I think one person watched us play. You know, but we stuck with it and kept doing Halloween shows every year, and then started the Rumpus in 2009, and then that just took off. So
yeah,
just Halloween parties.
Has it been 10 years since the beginning of the Rumpus?
Yeah,
it's huge.
Done
now.
11.
That parade is longer than the Athens Christmas parade, and that was like a 2.5, 3 hour investment to go down there.
I'm so proud, dude. I'm so proud of our town for showing up for that, because it really is everybody that does the Rumpus is the Rumpus. We've all made it into something together.
Yeah. It's Athens doing Athens like only Athens can, and it's the most democratic parade ever. Like, you can show up and join the parade. You can stand there and watch the parade, you know. You can set your band up using an outlet outside of Chick Piano.
Yep.
And play music while everybody walks by, like Fishbug did this year.
Yeah.
Is your mom a single mom?
I mean, they were married until we were all off to college.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, my mom and dad.
But you guys were super close.
Yeah, I got everything from my folks.
Yeah.
You know, my dad was kind of bipolar, but he was a genius.
What did he do?
Well, he was an architect by trade, but he had a photographic memory and a fascination for philosophy and history. So he was really gifted at philosophy and history and physics and architecture.
Yeah.
And he studied with like Buckminster Fuller.
Oh, no
for
shit.
example. And he was a modernist with architecture, but so he had this, his IQ was like 190 or something, just ridiculous.
Yeah.
Like, you know, he couldn't talk. Nobody was on his level. So it was endlessly frustrating for him to deal with people because nobody could match his intellect. So, you know, it was difficult for him. But then in his early life, he signed up for the war after the bombing of Pearl Harbor and went to Japan. Well, went to the South Pacific and then fought in Okinawa.
Yeah.
And nobody should
ever have to do that.
No.
Yeah. Island hopping in the South Pacific was brutal.
If, you know, I don't want to have to tell the stories that he told me. Mm-hmm. You don't want to see the watercolor paintings that he made of his experiences because it's just, you know, people don't have a concept. You know, he never recovered from the trauma of that. So when you describe him as bipolar and brilliant, I mean, did he have periods of time where he was insanely productive and then periods of time where he wouldn't get out of bed? Or no, he was really industrious.
Yeah.
He didn't sleep much. Mm-hmm. So he was always reading or studying. And when he wasn't, he was working. So yeah, he was constantly active with his mind. Mm-hmm.
But he didn't shield you from some of the trauma that he experienced. He talked to you about it.
Oh, no. We took the brunt of it. We took that on the nose, dude. He would, like, fly off the handle.
Yeah.
He could be triggered, like, a fear reaction, the post-traumatic thing.
Uh-huh.
Bless his heart, man. We tried to stand by, but, you know, he would fly into a rage. There was times when I was, like, you know, I don't know how old, 12 years old, standing between him and my mom.
Yeah.
Like to make sure nothing happened between them.
Yeah. How long would these outbursts of rage last?
Well, I mean, he never was physical.
Yeah.
Thank goodness. But They were quick-lived, and then he would be over it.
Was he remorseful?
No.
A lot of brilliant people have a hard time with remorse.
No, he wasn't conscious in a sense of it like that.
Right.
My dad he was not a narcissist, but he had those tendencies, which is very self-focused, unable to see beyond their own rationale.
Yeah.
But we also had great times, and I don't want to paint it as a picture.
Right.
I don't want to paint that bad of a picture. We also had wonderful times.
But do you feel like as an adult that you've had to sort of defuse or disarm that tendency to have these explosive outbursts? Because that becomes a pattern that gets written into your personality when you have a parent that has outbursts of anger.
The more I take my own responsibility for myself, the less that I would blame anybody else for what's happening with me. And the less I want or see the need to lash out like that.
I don't ever see the need to have outbursts of anger, but they still happen.
I haven't felt that kind of anger in a long time.
Yeah.
I understand it, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to. It's a funny story now, but when my first kid, who's now Ollie, was like a baby,
right?
It was a lot of crying, and then at one point I think we tried to go like a non-pacifier route, in general, because we didn't want to rely on a pacifier. That there's this one day I can remember,
right?
Oh, please take this pacifier,
right?
Because it was a lot of crying, and they took it and then spat it out and kept crying. And I literally took the pacifier out on the back steps of the house and tried to smash it with an axe. And it wouldn't smash. They're made where they were shatterproof.
Yeah.
And pacifiers, you can run them over with a train and they won't break.
Right.
So, but I think that was the point at which I was like, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't funny, but it was funny. It was funny enough that it was I had a moment of self-awareness, and I was like, okay, no, that's just not a solution here.
Right. But we
can laugh about it now.
You got to write that out of your own personal script.
I inherited a lot of anger reaction tendencies, and they're not mine.
Yeah.
And there's other people that I attracted into my life that fostered that I had to root out, because it's not appropriate for me anymore, and it's not in my basic essence to be angry with anybody or to feel that kind of reaction. So I'm done with that, I hope.
Did you have siblings?
I got an older sister and a younger brother.
So you're the middle child.
Yeah.
You have any of that middle child stuff?
Oh, all of it.
Yeah.
Totally.
So you said your parents were married until everybody got off to college.
Yeah.
Split up.
1988.
Man.
Yeah, which corresponds to a breakup that I had in college too, and I took some time off. I was like, dang, I was just destroyed. So I went and I lived with Mom for a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I went back to school and finished up, and then I came down here.
When I met you, you and Dave DeMisi were pretty inextricably linked culturally. You were both transplants from the Northeast.
Yeah.
I think Dave had a little harder time assimilating with the Southern thing,
Well, I had lived in Tennessee for 10 years.
Oh, okay.
So when I moved to Georgia, I knew I kind of wanted to get back into the South, in the slower speed of things.
Yeah.
And where Massachusetts is very mental oriented, and I wanted something that was a little more rootsy or from the heart based kind of interactions. And so Athens was a good choice for that, and didn't have the kind of prevalent hillbilly mentality that was going on in East Tennessee.
Where was it, Knoxville? Or?
Yeah, I was in Knoxville, which is a much better place now.
Yeah.
And I still have wonderful friends from back then too.
There's some great bands from Knoxville. I'm thinking predominantly of Super Drag.
Yeah.
Really good band.
Yeah.
And Fuzzy Sprouts, you did a couple solid years here. Went through 3 drummers that I can think of.
I think it was 6.
Yeah. I know that you and your mom were close because you and I had some discussions around the time that she passed. And I know that was really hard for you.
Oh, I was destroyed.
Yeah.
Absolutely destroyed.
Was it cancer?
Yeah. And I mean, my dad passed like in 2009. And then, so mom passed in 2013. And I mean, the grief, there's no way around it, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
And then I learned so much because I really didn't have anybody die in my life until I was in my 30s. I didn't understand it, and I didn't understand people who were grieving. But it turns out that grief is like, it just seems like one of the biggest problems we face.
Yeah,
I quit functioning.
Yeah.
I quit paying bills.
Yeah.
Quit taking care of myself. It's a long road out of there.
Grief, for me, grief carries with it the two like wicked stepsisters of depression and anxiety.
Yeah.
And it's not complicated for me. Like, grief is just this sadness of loss and a lack of hope for ever seeing that person again and having that experience, So, and also, nothing throws your level of emotional dependence on someone into sharp relief like the realization that they're no longer there anymore. Like, you don't really, it's that classic Otis Redding song, you don't miss your water until your well runs dry. Your parents were together and you're growing up, but you had some time with your mom after they split up. And yeah. So you got here with a crazy guitar. As I remember, you had a butcher block guitar, and like when people say butcher block, normally they mean a vaguely strat-shaped guitar with like laminated chunks, but this was actually like a cutting board, a square block of wood.
Yeah, it was. I got it at a yard sale.
Yeah.
And the guy that sold it to me said, my mother would kill me if she knew I was selling this. Like it was, an heirloom,
right?
For chopping tomatoes and garlic for the family sauce.
Right.
And I was like, okay, yeah. And it was like vaguely guitar shape and heft, and I chiseled it out and slapped a neck on it, routed out for some pickups, and it was a pretty savage instrument.
Yeah, it was a great sounding guitar.
Yeah, thanks.
How did you find a case for it though?
I don't know if it's whatever. It was just tiny. Just throw it in whatever. Right. Yeah, it was small. Yeah.
So when I met you, Fuzzy Sprouts were gigging all the time, and you guys stayed pretty busy. And then I left to go to Chicago for a while, and Fuzzy Sprouts eventually wound down. And I remember there were a couple of years I was sort of keeping track, and you were doing Kite to the Moon, and then I heard that your mom had passed, and you just disappeared for a while.
What happened? I think, I don't even remember that well, because it's like when that kind of stuff happens, it's just like, it's like a tunnel to go through. But, in 2009, I started the Wild Rumpus, so that started to become very consuming.
What was the impetus for that? Like, what made you think, what Athens needs is, you had already been doing Halloween parties with the Sprouts and done some in Northampton.
Mm-hmm. I put out a solo record with Daniel Peikin when he was doing Row Your Boat Records.
Yeah.
And he put out this collection of songs that I had recorded, like, just for myself. Mm-hmm. And there was no filter on this record. It was like, I wasn't thinking anybody would hear it or anything. I was totally doing it for my own amusement. And, being such a huge music fan, I shared it with Daniel, and he loved it. And he was like, let me put that out. And I said, okay. And we did. And so we were just kind of brainstorming things to promote the record.
Yeah.
And he said, what about a parade? And I was like, no. Like, wouldn't want to do anything to promote myself that was like that, But the idea worked on me. And I said, well, maybe a Halloween parade.
Yeah.
So we did it and called it the Wild Rumpus, and it just took off.
And so if you haven't been to the Wild Rumpus in Athens, next year, just do it. It's Mardi Gras and Super Bowl weekend and the best Halloween party you've ever been to all rolled into one. And they block the streets off in Athens, and there's like there are bands all along the parade route, and it's really turned into a thing.
It's so neat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's multiple days now too. There's like there's a kids' night, and it's pretty extraordinary. How many of the and you dressed up as Max from Where the Wild Things Are?
Yeah.
With the have you only ever had one suit, or has it been multiple? Same one
since the first year. I don't have time. I don't have time to get a new suit.
Yeah.
So like, usually hits me about like 3 days ahead of time. And I'm like, oh God, where's my? Oh, okay, there it is. I didn't even fix the rips from last year.
Yeah.
I just get up and do it.
So, this year it made money. It's made money the last few years, and you donate them to charity, right?
Yeah, I've been making charitable donations since 2010.
Yeah. First year was 2009, so.
Yeah. So we've given over almost $20,000 over the last 10 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I love it.
So who have you given money to?
This year was Nucci Space.
Of course.
In the past, it's been the Athens Area Homeless Shelter, Athens Land Trust, Georgia River Network, like all the Athens Area Humane Society. Yeah, always great people.
Yeah.
Amazing, deserving organizations. Nucci Space, of course, in the business of saving lives.
Yeah.
And my friends, saved my friends, I'm sure.
Hundreds of lives. Nucci Space has literally saved hundreds of lives. It saved my life. Right. So right before I moved to Chicago, I was like mooning around, like absolutely at the lowest ebb of my adult life. A lot of stuff going on. And I walked into Nucci Space and I said, man, I need some help.
Wow.
And
did anybody know that about you? I didn't know that.
I know that my brother was pretty concerned.
Yeah.
My twin brother, David. And,
so here's why I'm so happy you invited me today to talk, and why I'm so happy you're doing what you're doing, because men need to talk about this crap.
Yeah. Men don't.
It's a situation.
Yeah.
We need to talk about it.
Well, so I heard this thing on the radio the other day, and the CDC is reporting that life expectancy has just tumbled in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
And a lot of it is opiates, but a lot of it is suicide too.
Yeah, terrible food.
Yeah.
That's the other thing.
Yeah. Well, that's all. That's about affordability and.
Yeah.
I mean,
I'm not really qualified to talk about the opiate problem, but the food situation. I mean, we talk about mental health, and like your brain is an organ in your body, people.
Right.
If your body isn't healthy and you're not getting the right foods, you're really at a disadvantage for your brain working right.
Yeah. Well, and I've heard a lot of stuff recently about gut flora and
so true.
Yeah, and mental health. And I've actually done some experiments with Lisa and I in like high probiotic foods, and noticed like having a noticeable lift in mood when we're really conscious about feeding the microherd in our belly. And
that's fabulous.
When did you find out that your mom was sick?
Oh gosh, well, about 2011 or something.
Yeah. And what kind of cancer was it?
It was kind of a decentralized.
Something had metastasized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when we talk about people's health and like my mother's health and my dad and their mental health, you have to be taken in the context of generations of difficulties and traumas that happen to these people. So they go back generations.
Irish family?
My dad was Irish family, Irish English, and my mother, her family came from Italy.
Oh.
So, my mom's mom was OCD, crazy OCD, like wash your hands all day OCD.
Yeah.
And so my mom was very sane, so she, she had the perspective of her mother being like that. And my mom's strength in overcoming her adversity of her childhood is like, she's a superwoman for having a life, period, and for raising 3 kids, and for showing up and being so solid for us and everything. But she managed and didn't tell us about her OCD. Like, she had it pretty heavy too.
Really?
But she just masked it until the end. Like, I didn't even know that she suffered that until we were talking in her last days, and she told me about how, every time she would go to sleep, she had to go through the house and touch certain pictures in the living room before she could feel okay to go to sleep. Like, so it was like one of those things. So I inherited some of that. But, my mom, was kind of pre-boomer-ish, born in 1939.
Yeah.
I wish that generation had more of a sense of, in general, of their health. Their bodies and staying healthy. And it seems like they're challenged in that area.
Well, was your grandma born in the U.S. or was she?
No, she was Italian.
Yeah. I think a lot of people got here and just hit the slippery slope of trying to be okay as first-generation immigrants, and their personal well-being was secondary to creating a viable financial future for their kids, and they passed that down to your mom's generation. And like, it wasn't, I think, until a lot of Gen X people were like, man, this doesn't really work for me.
Yeah.
That people started to be like, maybe I should try to get a little more sleep, and
they had survival to deal with for sure.
My grandparents, for certain, like they grew their own food and
Were they in Georgia?
North Carolina,
Near
the Virginia border.
Where were they from?
They were, talk about Appalachian, like all the way back.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. I don't think it was even 20th century when my first ancestors came here. I think that my great something got off the boat and before 1900 and moved south, and set up in Virginia somewhere on my dad's side. I don't know about my grandparents. They were rural people, farmers, sawmill workers, eventually textile mill workers. But they came out of the Great Depression. My grandmother used to talk about they'd buy a 50-pound sack of flour, 50-pound sack of sugar, 14 or 20 heads of cabbage, a bushel of apples, and like 20 pounds of coffee, and the rest of winter was on whatever they could hunt and fish and grow and catch, and that was it for my grandma. Was the oldest of 9 kids.
There must be a great musical thread going through your family somewhere. So you and David are both like,
my mom's
monsters.
maiden name is Alcorn, right? And like a Johnny Alcorn, I think is his name, was from Reedsville, somehow related to this guy who was one of the original clawhammer banjo players. Mm-hmm. My mom was an opera singer, which is a big jump, right? Culturally, from like a 1 pair of shoes a year kid to an opera singer at the University of North Carolina. And then, she had an audition offer from the Metropolitan Opera in New York City, which she didn't get on the bus. She had terrible stage fright.
Oh,
it's pretty wild. Yeah.
I mean, that still makes me smile so much to hear that, though.
She sang for the rest of her life. Less so in her later years, but she was in community theater and stuff, and was a tremendously gifted musician. But
is she still with us?
No. She passed 2014, and it's been really hard.
Sorry, bud.
Yeah. So when your mom gets this cancer diagnosis, did you get to spend much time with her before she passed?
Man, to be honest, I thought we were going to beat it and I was going to get another decade with her, and it didn't pan out. I guess I was just in flat denial of it, she, we didn't live in the same state, so I wasn't seeing how serious it was real. And she would kind of gloss over it and didn't want me to worry about stuff, and was, I think, really protecting me from the worst details of it. But I did spend the last couple of months with her.
Yeah.
Hardest time of my life, hands down.
Did she go into hospice?
I about went crazy. She did. I think I did lose my mind.
Yeah.
While I was up there.
Hospice is the weirdest It's the weirdest twilight world between life and death, because you spend so much time with your dying parent trying to beat it. You go to, like, we were going to Emory, and she was going out to MD Anderson, and the hospitals in my hometown, and just like, we're going to beat this. We're going to try this chemo and that chemo, and this is a trial, and that's it's experimental. And MD Anderson is running a short, like, experimental course of chemo for this cancer, and then one day they're just like, yeah, it's game over. We're gonna put you in this incredibly professional, comfortable environment, and you've got a pump for morphine or fentanyl or whatever it was. And it was, I mean, I'm super grateful for hospice. And sometimes actually, like, think about how, like, there was a day when my mom was in hospice care where it was a beautiful day, just like today. And we dragged all the furniture outside. There's a little concrete pad outside her room.
Yeah.
And we just posted up there in the sunshine. And it was like an old family gathering. There was like, my family was all around me, a lot of my relatives who I didn't see that often, and we just sat out there in the sun, and we didn't talk about death or cancer or drugs. Or my mom had one of those big beds that's like a giant chair,
Yeah.
And we sat out there in the sun. That was probably the last really good day.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all super professional and wonderful, and I don't know. What was your hospice experience like? Was it like that?
Well, yeah. I mean, sort of. It didn't last long.
Yeah.
I mean, by the time my mom went to hospice, I think it was like a week or something.
Yeah.
So I had been commuting into Cambridge, Mass, where she was from her home, which is about 30 miles out of Boston, in the snow and in the ice, and everything. And I wouldn't trade having those last days with my mom for anything, but it was the hardest days of my life, no doubt.
Yeah,
just brutal.
Yeah.
Well, once I realized it was finally, coming to an end, I went through the range of emotions that I imagine most people do.
Yeah.
Just staring down your entire history with somebody and how much you love them and how much space they're holding for you, Yeah. And when they're gone, and the experience, I think that just that term, holding space, so when somebody actually goes and they're gone, like, I think that's what we feel is like that giant vacuum.
Yeah.
Like when somebody's really holding you up in their life and that goes away, man, that just wipes you out.
Were your siblings around for that?
Yeah, we were all together.
Yeah. You guys are pretty close.
I am close to them.
Yeah.
I love my brother and sister, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, every family goes through this, that, the other in the wake of something like this. It's like, you hear it so often, it's just a bad time for people.
Yeah.
We hope to patch things up. I mean, come on. What are we going to do? We're still here.
Yeah.
We got to live.
Yeah.
We got to get along.
Yeah.
What are we here for? Part of my mission in life as an incarnation on earth was to help my parents.
Yeah.
I know this. Because when they were both gone, I was like, I got this well, there it is. That was it. In a way, I got this feeling well, I'm done. Of course, I'm not done.
Right.
There's so much more.
Right.
But my original intention was it's complete.
Yeah.
And I was successful. I helped them, be happy.
Yeah.
In my own way.
Talk to me a little bit about when you say holding space, what that means for you, and what that meant in your relationship with your mom.
Oh gosh, it can mean so many different things, but literally, I think energetically, when somebody is holding space for you, literally, like with their intention or their love for you, like it buoys you, like it lifts you, it keeps you more stable, like having that love there. You know, that's if somebody like that you're close to, and our energy is intertwined, right? I believe this fully, that's like the unseen, the energy between people is a real thing, and it's a physical thing.
Yeah.
You don't see it, but it's physical.
Yeah, yeah.
And so when a person departs like that, like it severs that connection. And there's still a connection. I believe that, like from the spirit world to our world, that you can still make use of some of that, and you can still feel that. But the physical thing has to shift or has to go away. So I think loss does that. Now, then there's another kind of a holding space where it might be more like a projection from myself, that like how I value somebody. Like when David Bowie died.
Yeah.
Like he was holding space for me. Somehow him being there. And I mean, I think this is true of him for a lot of people, that he gave license to a lot of people to be free, to act, to be creative, to, you know, all these things that David Bowie meant to people.
Yeah.
So in that way, like when he died, it like was absolutely, I felt that as well. Like, oh my God, you know, just him being there meant that I could do this and this and this, or be this and this and this. And
I think the value of art for people is that it creates an empathic experience where we can sort of, it's like being an emotional astronaut, right? Like for me, the person that David Bowie sounds like he was for you, Anthony Bourdain was for me.
oh wow.
And I still can't really talk about Anthony Bourdain's death because I didn't really understand why he was so important to me until just a few months ago. I was like, why am I still taking this so hard? But because he was this manifestation of goodwill, he was an American, and everything that means, all the privilege that embodies, but he was aware of it. And he would go to these other cultures with cameras and be like, look, we're all on this planet together, and we all eat food, and we break bread together, and it's a fellowship, and it's a communion, and if we can't figure out how to get along, like, we're doomed. And then he did exactly what doomed people do, you know?
Yeah.
And I haven't really bounced back from it yet, you know? And I feel that way about Bowie. Represented that for a lot of people because he was this amazingly sort of free person, like very fluid with his gender identity, very fluid with his art. Like, you've been described as an incredibly fluid guitar player. Like, that's something I've heard over and over. And Bowie was that way in every aspect of his art, his manifestations, you know, the Thin White Duke and the Aladdin Sane and all these different characters, but also his ability to write and play. And like, he changed and changed and changed, and that gave a lot of people a lot of freedom. And then when he died, it was like, oh shit, you know, we're all headed towards that.
Yeah, in addition to just being like an amazing human being.
Yeah.
I remember seeing him in Atlanta. It was when he was on the Earthlings tour. At one time, he just like in the show, he just kind of stopped and he was sort of chit-chatting with the person in the front row. It was like so personable, and so charismatic, and so comfortable in his own skin.
Well, there's a kindness that underlies all of that, right?
Yeah,
and that's the other thing about Bourdain that's important to me, is how kind he was.
Yeah,
you know, and Bowie was just, you know, I think it's the band Granddaddy. Have you ever heard the story about him just turning up at their New York show, walking in and saying, hello, I'm David. And okay, yes, we know who you are. But he knew every member of the band's names, and he was a big fan, and he talked about his favorite songs, and they were just like, is this happening? Is David Bowie in our dressing room talking about what great band we are? You know, but that was the essence of his kindness. It was very, like, it was incredibly generous, and that's just who the guy was. So Sam Skolton was on recently. He's this amazing guitar player, singer-songwriter from Louisville, and he lost his wife to cancer. And he was talking to me about the breakfast that he went to with his father, who had also recently lost his wife. They were at Waffle House at like 11 o'clock at night. And I remember the breakfast after my mom passed. Like, it was just a thing that had to happen. Like, you can't just stop eating, you know?
Yeah.
And that was the beginning of climbing out of the hole of my mom's death. But do you remember events like with your father gone? Like, I'm assuming that someone of the three siblings had to like take the wheel and handle funeral arrangements. And
actually, with my dad, we didn't. And we didn't find out about him passing until days after, because he lived in Florida with his wife, and so we didn't know. I mean, we knew he was, we knew his days were numbered, but
yeah,
so we didn't. But we all went to Florida, for a funeral, and I mean, everything was more or less handled. And in the case of my mom,
that's what I was more thinking about.
Oh yeah, well, that was in April 2013, and I had been invited to go and play music on tour with Sam Fogarino. So the day after my mom died, I was on the road back to Athens.
Oh my God.
I mean, I couldn't stand another day. I literally just could not do it. I think I would have just imploded and turned inside out if I had to. I wish I had been able to muster the strength to stay and be with my brother and sister and do the memorial. And it was a beautiful memorial, and I wrote something for it, but I wasn't there. But it was filled with my mom's friends and family, and looking back on it, I wish I'd been able to do it, but I just couldn't. I couldn't.
I mean,
I hightailed it for Athens.
Yeah.
I hadn't been home in 2 months.
Yeah.
I hadn't seen my kid. I hadn't been in my home for 2 months. So I was just beside myself. And you don't make the best decisions when you're in that state.
I'm to a point now where there might have been a time where I thought I knew what other people needed to do when they're grieving, but that was informed by my innocence of that on my own part, Yeah. And now that I've lost some people, that certainty is no longer there. It's that classic Bob Dylan thing. I was so much older then. I'm younger than that now. I know so much less about how other people should act these days.
Well, it's a great way to be. Let everybody process how they're going to do.
Sure. So you did a short tour with Sam.
Yeah, which probably saved my life. It was threw me into a situation that was wonderful tour and with great people, and got me completely out of my element,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It was very positive.
But then you were back in Athens, and you had the double whammy of the post-tour letdown. And
and like a cat had been getting into my house, like with my other cat, and some neighborhood cat had gotten in and literally peed on everything in my house. Like it smelled like, cat urine all over my house. It was ongoing, dude.
That's the fucking worst, man.
Was
it summertime?
Insult to injury. It was spring.
Your mom died in winter.
Yeah, April 1st.
Yeah. The cat urine in Georgia summer I sometimes imagine that the man who invented mustard gas was sitting in a shack somewhere in South Georgia going, if I could just concentrate this a tiny bit more,
It's about right.
That's the worst.
No, it's a long road back from something like that. In, what people say is maybe you never recover, but you just learn to kind of, manage it, I guess. And I guess that's true to a degree, but I think after I passed the 2-year mark, I started to feel better again. It took a solid year to even emotionally get off the couch.
Yeah.
And then another year, and I started to have more like untethered happy feelings about things.
Yeah.
Just spontaneously happy. and not dragged down.
So it was about a year before, or longer. To someone who's still down in that space right now, I've got a friend, there's a friend of the show in Chicago, is dealing with an incredible loss right now. And like, if you could speak to the Tim that came back from the tour to a house that had been gassed by a tomcat, and you were like down in this funk, if you could talk to him right now, what would you say?
Man, I guess just advise to keep doing the basics. Take a shower. Eat food, like eat healthy food, get out in the sunshine. And I pretty much did those things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm lucky that I come from a strain of pretty resilient people, and just keep doing, man, and be around people, because being around people, so many people freaking understand this. And we've all, most of us now have gone through this. So man, get out there and get the hugs for real and commiserate, because when we spread that out, not that you want to adopt anybody's grief, but when somebody is feeling that and we connect on that level, man, there's a great sympathy that's so healing. And it's, I think, been a great part of my healing that people I didn't even know that well reached out to me and said, hey, so sorry you went through this. Let's get a coffee or a beer, or man, sending hugs or whatever, and then get together with people in real life too, of course. Like, Facebook is great and you receive a lot of support from social media and stuff. The addendum to that discussion is be with people.
Yeah.
Really be with people.
I think the urban life is really hard for dealing with any kind of emotional discomfort, because it's always magnified by the sense of isolation of being surrounded by millions of people but not making contact with anyone.
That is so true.
And then also Chicago is it's wintertime in Chicago. It's brutal. I keep telling my friends there, like, you should just come visit.
Come visit.
And get a little taste of what life is like here, because I did a year in Chicago courting Lisa and trying to convince her to be my girlfriend, and we moved back down here eventually, because it's just easier to live here.
Well, you just have to force yourself. When you're in the dumps like that, you just have to force yourself to do it. Some days you're just not going to feel like it.
Yeah.
But do it. It's because what else are we doing?
So tell me, just the basics, right? Shower.
Yeah.
Eat a handful of granola or something that isn't
clean up
poison.
the trash in your house.
Yeah.
Take it out. Clean your environment. Get sunshine.
Have you ever heard that interview with Mark Maron and Louis C.K.?
What's that about?
Maron asks Louis C.K. about an episode in his life where he was living on the second or third floor apartment, and Louis C.K. was in a depressive episode, and I think that dude's untreated like mental illness is part of why he's now kind of cast into the wilderness as a performer, and he seems to be completely unrepentant about it. So it's kind of like, okay, man, enjoy Siberia, But at the time, this was before he was successful. Maron was experiencing some success. He came to visit his old friend Louis C.K., and Louis C.K. was living in an apartment full of black plastic bags of garbage.
Oh.
Just surrounded by garbage.
That's not going to help.
And they hung out for a while and talked, and eventually Maron said, hey, you ought to maybe take out some of this garbage. And Louis C.K. said, I just can't.
Well, that says a mouthful, doesn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I've been there, though. I've been that kind of depressed. Fortunately, I've never been surrounded by bags of garbage, but, I mean, I've been surrounded by junk, like a house full of junk,
Well, herein is another conversation we might need to have as collectively, is this idea that it's all up to you to do everything for yourself, and that it's well, I mean, it does all come down to us.
Right.
But, maybe if Buddy was in a better state, he could have been like, hey man, let me get this, one of these bags for you, and you do one too. And then, we can get into these deep, deep holes where, okay, so here I'm going to reference my work as my healing work. Okay. Because I do massage and energy work, and I've been doing this for like 20 years.
Yeah.
So, that gives me a whole different perspective on things. But when a person is really the most in need of the help, it's almost like they'll do anything in their power to avoid getting it. Like so many people, I'll try, if I come up with a person that I care about or that I come in contact with, and they're in that state and they need help, I might say, hey, let's do a session, or I'll do some energy work for you. And they'll miss the appointment. They'll obfuscate. So there's all kind of other kind of things that'll rear their head in this situation. Like, I don't deserve it. I'm not good enough. It won't work. Like, all these excuses pop up, and so sometimes we just have to make them do it.
I think the journey through pain, though, at the worst ends at a kind of numbness, right?
That's true too. And
coming back from there means you have to come back through the pain.
Yeah.
And so you get to a point where you're surrounded by bags of garbage, but at least you're not actively sad or actively self-destructive. You're just kind of numb, like, oh yeah, this is some garbage. I'm surrounded by junk, or I haven't gotten off the couch in 36 hours except to go piss. But at least I'm not actively thinking I want to die right now. I'm numb. And so when you say to someone, let's come back from there, they're thinking, that's okay. I'm good right here on this desert island of no pain.
Yeah.
I don't want to come back through the pain. But I think that, like, and I've talked about this before, I've been lucky enough to benefit from the structure of a 12-step program, which gives you like a step-by-step framework for like defusing that bomb without having to try to do it all at once, And I've often thought that if there was some way to adapt the whole 12-step thing to depression, that you could like go bit by bit, not have to turn completely into the like gale force wind of your feelings of abandonment or feelings of sadness or self-loathing. Like, let's just cut one wire at a time, take one bag of garbage out, you know, both actually and metaphorically, but you started your climb back. If your mom passed in April and you were home from tour in spring, you had all summer to kind of get ready for, that's what, 2014, the fifth Wild Rumpus. Was the work and preparing for that part of what pulled you out eventually?
Well, I may want to return to what we were just talking about.
Oh, okay.
Eventually, but to answer your question, in 2013, but of course you're sort of what is it? The first phase of grief is denial, right?
Yeah.
So, you go into this sort of like shielding of yourself from the excruciating nature of it, of the loss. And you're like, okay, everything, I think people in that state have a certain amount of time where it's almost like a grace period before the dull pain really sets in. I mean, that's my experience. Mm-hmm. So I got a rumpus done, and my relationship at that time was good and solid. And I had just proposed, and we were engaged. So that happened before my mom passed.
Yeah.
So that was something positive to look forward to as well, and that we worked on. And those, like, I had things in my life to dedicate to that were happy stuff that gave meaning.
Yeah.
But if I may revisit what we were just talking about.
Yeah.
So when you're in that, for me personally, I want to speak from my own experience and the healing work that I've done and accepted for myself, from others and such. There was just certain things I couldn't get to. So like, I've tried to accept responsibility and change the things about my own life and about myself that I didn't like, weren't serving me, were outdated or causing depression or anxiety. But I couldn't get to them.
Yeah.
So I've always like sought out, and that's totally my recommendation to anybody as well, is to seek out healer people. Mm-hmm. And there's many, 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 many that are doing all kinds of crazy stuff. So, in my own way, I've gone far enough with it. Like, taking care of my energy. Mm-hmm. Like and when I say that, I mean like my chakras, which are like your sensory perception centers that are through your body.
Right.
That's like the, phase one.
Mm-hmm.
Beyond that, there's our genetic makeup that we now know, like trauma and other things are passed in our DNA. Like, so yeah, my dad was in World War II.
Yeah.
His dad was in World War I. So to a certain degree, like, I inherited some of that, and I feel it, even though I've never been a warrior. I'm not a fighter, but I understand some of it. Anyway, if you want to get into your own life and start tweaking in with that stuff that's that ingrained, or that generationally might go back a millennia, mm-hmm. It's really difficult work. So absolutely reach out to people and seek out the help.
Yeah, I think for me, like through the course of my recovery from like trauma and addiction, for a long time I was very emphatic that there was a right way and a wrong way to get better. And one of the things that having this podcast has taught me is that there are wildly varied paths to getting back to zero, mm-hmm. or better than zero.
Mm-hmm. How are you doing now?
It's been a tough year in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. My wife lost her youngest brother last year about this time.
Sorry.
And she works a really long way from the house. Like, she has to drive a lot. And so there's been just a lot of emotional energy and kind of holding her up and making sure that she gets what she needs so she can do this incredibly difficult work that she does, and also being a dad.
Good on you.
But, but the podcast has been this journey too, like, I've learned a lot about my own sadness and exploring other people's, like, that there's an incredible, I get a lot from helping other people, although it's often not easy, there's definitely times when people reach out and they're like, hey, I need to talk, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
And because I'm kind of living in it a lot. There was a moment mm-hmm. where I was, one of these recent podcasts, especially hard one, and I was editing it, and I was thinking I should have done a podcast about musicians and their pets or something happier. But that's why I started this new song explication thing that's like, for at least some time of the week, all I'm focused on is how much I love music,
Well, I think your podcast is brave and important work.
Thanks, man.
It's necessary.
Just so many musicians are encouraged to not have any emotional life outside of like, fuck yeah, man. Like, that's the one emotion you're allowed to have.
And we're all nature deprived.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, a touring band, you're in a van on a highway, then you show up, at a club, and there's,
Man, one of the hardest tours of my life was upper Midwest this time of year one year. It was just, the sky would just go from like lead colored to asphalt colored to pitch colored. And then I would wake up and it would be lead colored again, but it would only be lead colored for about 3 hours, and then it would go to asphalt and then pitch again, and it just was this like gray to dark gray to black to gray to dark gray. And we would be driving down these highways in Minnesota or northern Wisconsin, and there'd be these huge expanses of gray fields that had gone fallow because it was the end of the season, but then there'd be a patch of black because it had been turned over to turn all that corn stubble back into the earth. So sky was gray, dark gray, black. The earth was gray, black. And then we would pass these farmhouses, and I would see this little amber rectangle of light where someone was sitting down to dinner, and I would be like, just stop the van. I'm going to go sit down at that table and be with those people, because we were like in these grimy concrete boxes that smelled like cigarette smoke and that vinegary sour beer smell, and then in some punk rock house that was barely heated.
Oh God.
And, like, it was just grim. Everything was gray. And, and I would see these farmhouses and be like, I bet that's a big family.
I mean, it sounds like Poland or something.
It felt like Poland, you know. But like,
I think of the people of Poland.
When I was touring Europe with the Lolos in 2006, we hit a lot of countries in a little bit of time, and I kept realizing that, oh man, southern Spain feels just like Texas and northern Mexico. And then like we were in rural England, I was like, this feels just like North Carolina or Virginia. And at some point we were in Sweden, and I was like, this feels just like Minnesota. And I was like, wait a minute. Like, all those people came to the new world from the old world and settled where in places that felt like home.
Totally.
Yeah. So that's why you have so many Spanish people in you know, the old Mexico, which is of course New Mexico, Arizona, Southern California, Texas, and so many Swedes in northern Minnesota and other Nordic people, and then all these like Celts in North Carolina, Virginia, because they got off the boat and were like, huh.
This brings up something I was thinking about when you, in the time between you asked me to do this podcast and today. Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. And what do you think? Okay, so in my experience, it seems like humans gravitate toward that which is familiar.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Okay. So, and I think this is like scientifically examined as well. So we're comfortable with what we know. And that's the kind of feedback we want to receive also. You know, even social media does that. It gives you more of what you know, and they know that you'll click on it more.
Silos you.
Yeah. So, all right. So how does a person who comes from adversity or trauma do something different?
Break out of the trauma cycle?
Yes, because, and I see this often, where if you're not happy with the way things are, but you can't make a different choice because it's unfamiliar.
I think it involves a lot of risk. You got to break a lot of habits.
Yeah.
There's this doctor.
I think it's so difficult.
I'm a huge fan of this woman, Dr. Nadine Burke Harris. I had to look her name up on my phone really quick. She talks about adverse childhood experiences and how trauma affects emotional and physical health later in life. And
I'm so happy that that's part of the discussion now.
She's the first Surgeon General of the state of California. Like, she is now, like and I don't normally steer people towards TED Talks because I don't feel like mental health is something you can buy like a 6-pack, you know, like you can't do 17 minutes and fix your life, you know, like, but her TED Talk is incredible. And she talks about adverse childhood experiences, and there's a whole body of work about healing childhood trauma. And I think it's really important because, like, so many of us are carrying around these wounds, and we keep repeating these.
All of us are.
Well, there's this great book also that I discovered because of Mark Mirren.
Is it Gabor Maté, perhaps?
No,
because he's a psychotherapist that speaks on it as well.
Talk to me about that.
Well, you can look him up as well, and anybody listening can look up Gabor Maté, and this is his field as well. Is, you know, the childhood trauma and the triggers that causes through a person's life.
Yeah, I think that like the healing of long-term trauma is just something that you just do every day and try to become. And I think that's the great value of therapy is you go in and you say to someone, hey, I'm having these issues and these problems. This is what my childhood was. And they say, well, let's look at the ways you're manifesting that in your daily life now, and let's try to break that cycle.
Yeah.
And because therapy is so expensive, part of what I hope to accomplish with the podcast was to help people see themselves and other people and learn from other people's mistakes, or at least learn to identify their own mistakes as they're happening and start to try to kind of diffuse that bomb. But also you have these other short-term periods of extreme trauma where in your case was the death of your mom. Certainly something similar happened to me, but also the end of my first marriage threw a lot of things into sharp relief in my life that I realized like I've been doing the same thing over and over, and it's not good for me or the person that I end up sort of taking as an emotional hostage, you know?
Wow. Yeah.
And I think that
let's talk about some of the devices that you used.
Well, for me,
do you want to mention that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was just like for any addict or alcoholic, it just becomes that there's a great power in read the literature of the program, get a sponsor, go to meetings, and be involved in it. Like deal with the problem every day. Get past that first stage of denial. And then get into the step work because that's what works. But
yeah,
I think for people who have more of a non-specific anxiety or depression disorder, form healthy relationships, ask for help if you need it, talk to your people.
Yeah.
Make friendships with people who have something that you like. I want to be more like that guy. That guy seems happy.
Yeah.
You know?
Models.
And also learn not to use other people's bodies for your own distraction. Like Athens, one of the great things about Athens, if you're single, is that there's a lot of people hooking up, you know. But like that has its own self-destructive spiral. People using other people as a way of not feeling their feelings. That's when I say taking an emotional hostage. That's what I mean. Like I'm gonna get involved with someone in order to, and that's like a codependent thing. And there's a great book called Codependent No More, and several musicians I've talked to in the past few years have referenced it. But it's a way of kind of understanding how we use other people's behavior and the drama that we create with them as a way of not dealing with our elemental issues.
Sure.
You know?
Sure. I wonder if I'm doing that with myself. I mean, we're Gen Xers, right?
Yeah.
I think we're great at avoidance, or, you know, I know for myself, delusion. I have to fight with illusion versus reality.
Yeah.
I got to constantly check myself against reality.
The book I was going to mention that Mark Maron turned me on to was The Fantasy Bond, which is it's not a great book, but because it's written by a very clinical psychologist. But the idea is really powerful, and that is that people who had absentee parents, and a lot of us who had boomer parents, had parents who were very career oriented or just very, very self-involved, because that's what that generation was encouraged to do. And they were absent from our lives in some ways, and so as a result, we formed these sort of idealized relationships with them of who we thought they were, in order to sort of soothe this like sad and abandoned feeling person inside us, and we carry that ability into future relationships. So we get involved with people and we form this idealized idea of who they are, as you just said, delusion.
Yeah.
And that isn't fair to that person. Like,
no.
Because and then when they don't act the way we expect them to, we're like, what's wrong with you? I thought you were this person. And like, I've never been that person. Like, why would you think that? You know?
Nailed it.
Yeah, so the Fantasy Bomb was really powerful for me to sort of figure out like what unfair expectations I was bringing to relationships. And also like it's not fair to expect someone to fix you. It's not someone else's job. You know, I'm not.
Right.
But it was also great to meet someone in my wife who wanted me to be as happy as I wanted her to be. Like once that two-way street was established, like the basis of a real relationship was suddenly possible.
Ah,
That's a huge thing, and like I didn't expect that from any relationship prior, ever. So that was a big corner to turn.
That's sweet.
Hey, the Crash and Ride podcast would like to let you know about a new industry-wide initiative focused on mental health care called Backline. Backline is a hub for artists, industry professionals, and their families to quickly and easily access mental health and wellness resources. Backline is partnered with leading support organizations and care providers to streamline access to services specifically geared towards the music industry. Go to www.backline.care. That's backline.care to get the support you need to thrive both on and off the road. Now, I talked to someone recently from Backline as part of a services episode I'm hoping to air sometime before Christmas, and we talked about how Backline works. Basically, you contact them through the website or through their hotline, and they pair you with a caseworker, and the caseworker is familiar with resources in your area to help you get the help that you need. That's everything from sober companions to go on the road with you on tour if you're struggling to stay straight and away from drugs on the road, to plugging you into mental health resources in your area. They can figure out how to hack your way through the jungle of paperwork if you're one of these people who's on the Affordable Care Act thing, and get mental health care based on the rules and regulations and ability to pay that you have in the place that you live. Once again, that's backline.care, BACKLINE.CARE. Now, if you're a musician in the Athens, Georgia area and you're struggling, you can always go to NutriSpace. NutriSpace is a 501c3 nonprofit mental health resource for musicians and regular people in the Athens area. If you qualify, and by that I mean if you're a musician in the Athens area, you can go see a counselor and it'll be subsidized by NutriSpace. NutriSpace provides all kinds of great services, including hearing screenings to make sure you're not going deaf from playing in your doom metal band or whatever. And also, sometimes they have dentists come in and check people's teeth and give people fillings. I mean, NutriSpace does a lot of amazing work in our community, but their primary mission is to help musicians struggling with depression and anxiety. If you're just a regular person and you have depression and anxiety, you can go into NutriSpace and get a referral. Your help might not be subsidized, you may not be able to see a counselor for $10 or $15 an hour like a musician can, but they'll refer you to get the help and the resources that you need. So you can call NutriSpace at 706-227-1515 or go to nuci.org, that's nuci.org. And finally, if you're struggling with anxiety and depression and you're contemplating self-harm, you can always call the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. That's 1-800-273-TALK. It's 24/7. It's free. It's confidential. They have trained volunteers to help you through your crisis. The National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, 1-800-273-8255, or go to suicidepreventionlifeline.org. All right, let's jump back into our interview with Timi Conley. So you've clawed your way out of that hole that you fell into after your mom's death. And
sort of.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it ever leaves you completely. My dad once said to me after his mom died, because his father died much earlier, he said, when both of your parents are gone, you feel very different about the world.
That's true from my experience.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just kind of a ghost on my shoulder, It's I don't think I'm in the hole.
Yeah.
But it's just haunted or something.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not quite all right. But you know what? I mean, I'm in it for the long haul. I'm I have daily struggles.
Yeah.
But we all do. Has life on earth ever been easy for anybody? I don't know. I mean,
it's tempting to look over there at people that you don't feel a kinship with and say, well, I think their lives are easy, but my suspicion is it's probably not.
I don't think they are.
Yeah.
We gotta keep doing the obvious things.
Yeah.
Like reinforcing with gratitude, and focusing on the positive.
I think that's huge.
It's just grinding sometimes, in in as much as we want to hear life reflected back to us in how we feel, like we were talking about a minute ago. Like when you're sad, you don't want to hear a happy song. It's insulting. You want to hear a sad song.
Right.
But that being said, we got to flip the script. If we want to feel good, yes, we do want to feel good. It is better to feel good.
What is your daily practice like? How do you hold it together these days?
That's such a good question. Thank you. I do a lot of meditating.
A lot? What's a lot?
A lot is almost every day. And
how long?
I mean, it varies.
Yeah.
But meditating has saved my life.
Do you have a period of time that you set aside for it?
No, I just do it when I feel it. Mm-hmm. But, you know, if I feel like I'm edgy, I better sit. And it's just something I learned years ago from Tibetans. The Tibetan lamas at one point came to Athens.
I remember that. I wasn't a part of that group. That was wasn't Kite kind of involved with that?
We better talk to him about that.
Yeah.
Get him to do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like a cultural exchange. This one year had to be mid-90s, early 90s, mid-90s. And they came and they visited Athens. They did a sand mandala at the Classic Center and swept it up and dumped it in the river. And they did some other things. They did a chant at the UGA chapel that was beautiful. And then they did a small meditation practice group that was at Athens Yoga. And I happened to be there, and it was as simple as the guy just said, sit in this position, do this with your hands, and then just focus on your breathing. I mean, it's that simple.
Yeah.
And if you can do it, you're good. You know, you just have to keep trying. That's as simple as it gets. And then your monkey brain will try to think, and all the things you're dealing with will come up for you. And then you just have to keep recentering on your breathing.
Yeah.
And if you do it long enough, you'll get to a point where you'll get into these different energy states, and you physiologically will feel it.
So meditation, you're pretty careful about what you eat too.
I've been a vegetarian for 20 some odd years. Yeah. 25 years.
Lacto-ovo vegetarian?
I mean, I eat some, dairy.
Yeah.
But, you know, fresh fruit and berries and nuts is most of my diet. I love wheat. I eat a lot of wheat.
How much sleep do you get?
6 or 7 hours a night.
Yeah. That's a good amount.
It's not bad. I'm a pretty good sleeper.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I get on my bicycle every chance I get now.
Man, aren't bikes amazing?
I freaking love bikes. I've always loved bikes. I've ridden bikes since I was 4 or 5.
Yeah. Same.
Anyway, bikes to me are freedom. And I love the feeling of motion of bicycles.
Yeah.
And I love the feeling of not pumping gas today.
Yeah. So, did you manage to beat the OCD thing? You say your grandma had it very openly. Your mom had a quietly closeted OCD life. But
yeah. I think I mildly have it.
Yeah.
Not to a point where it's an issue, but we touched on this, I think, when the mic was rolling, maybe at the very beginning, but I have this thing called misophonia, which is now just being identified as sound triggers. Mm-hmm. And I think this must be related to OCD, but it's where if I hear a certain sound, I'll get an anger reaction from it.
There are certainly sounds that set me off, but they're often like that dead battery and a smoke alarm sound, which makes me completely insane. But
yeah.
But just because
I get it from trickling water.
Yeah.
Or quiet clicking sounds. So it can just send me into a rage, and it's not cool at all. And you can't blame anybody. It's not their fault if they're pouring themselves a cup of water. Mm-hmm. It's like, but you know, your whole tagline, loud guitars save lives, is absolutely true in my case. Like if I can turn up my guitar, and that's why I like it loud.
Right.
Because quiet sounds mess with me sometimes.
Huh.
Yeah. So that might be tied in with that, but it's just, I haven't been able to get a solution for that. As much as I've tried hypnosis.
Yeah.
I've tried other kinds of like tinkering with the fabric of the universe and how my incarnation is interfacing with the matrix of things, and like that didn't access it either. So I do not know what the deal is with that, but I know it runs in the family.
Your description of your reaction is conspicuously missing the word anxiety, but it sounds to me like that's what it causes.
No, it's more like anger.
Well, that to me is a natural reaction to anxiety, though. It's like when something is out of your control, this physical manifestation of fear, which is anger, like takes hold. To me, that anxiety and fear are really...
It feels more visceral than that.
Yeah.
It's just like a direct, like when I think of anxiety, I think of like a low grade simmering fear, or I mean, it could be very pointed as well.
My anxiety is never low grade.
Oh, wow. Well, that's a whole conversation there. I mean, I definitely feel anxious about things. That's more like related to, oh my God, how is this going to work out? What's going to happen?
Yeah.
You know, I'm worried about this. You know, I feel like that's more like a kind of a bad street to go down, rather than just like something that just rears its head, like busting through the pavement of your,
right,
you know, right in front of you like a dragon.
Right.
Plenty could be said about that as well.
Yeah.
About anxiety.
I just wonder if it's not the same. I think maybe there might be the difference between the sort of conditioned feminine response to anxiety, to that, those same emotions that you talk about having rage. Your grandma or your mom would have this need to straighten or tidy or touch or clean. Like it might be a socialization of just a different way of handling those emotions versus like being a guy and, you know, Hulk smash is how we're taught to handle so many problems in life, you know.
I would welcome people's comments on that. The misophonia thing is pretty widespread.
Yeah.
A lot of people have this, and not much is known about it.
Huh. You know,
shall we take a call?
I wish we could, you know. What I might do, several people, I sent out a survey a couple of weeks ago about like how can we make the show better, and there were lots of people who were like, I have questions.
Right.
You know, they have questions for the guests and they want to like follow up. So what I'll do is I'll encourage people to contact us and we'll do a follow up.
Oh yeah, and that's great because you know, I would love to connect with listeners who are curious about stuff that we talk about, and you know, also I do healing work, so I'm available.
Yeah,
and I do astrology as well.
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah,
yeah,
and that can be really great for sorting some of this stuff out.
Well, man, I usually wind these things up with 10 questions that I came up with. That's sort of similar to the Actor Studio questions, but they're my own questions.
Okay.
And if you want, we can jump into that.
Sure.
Okay. What's your fondest memory that you have of a meal that you've had?
Oh, goodness. What if nothing is coming to mind?
That's also okay. Yeah.
Fondest memory of a meal.
It's interesting. Of the vegetarians I've interviewed, like Thor Harris, who's just absolutely ardently vegetarian and very, very serious about it, was like, I don't really have emotional attachments to food. Which for me, as a Southerner, and you know, as the guy that I am, was like, really?
Yeah.
But some people don't.
I will say Thanksgiving this year was really nice.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, I went over to Cal Clement's house, and it was a vegan feast.
Yeah.
And Cal was a wonderful host. There was a bunch of wonderful people there. I made a blueberry raspberry pie, and I made an apple pie, and I saved out the apple pie. So the blueberry pie got destroyed, which I was really pleased that people thought it was a good pie. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it was a lovely dinner. And later on, I ended up at Michael Wegner's, which I've often done Thanksgiving at Michael's house. And
he's also vegetarian, right?
No. No, but I brought the apple pie.
Yeah.
And then the apple pie got destroyed at Michael's house. So I was like, yes.
Perfect.
But I also just like really love and relish having food with my kids. I love feeding my kids.
Yeah.
I love feeding them good food.
Man, isn't that a great feeling? You put a meal in front of your kid and then you know you're doing it right when they go after the vegetables and fruit first. And you're like, oh man, that's such a good feeling. Like, my kid eats fruit. I didn't eat fruit when I was her age. I didn't eat vegetables, you know?
My kids love my smoothies that I make.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're fresh, nuts and berries, basically.
Yeah. What did you use for a binder in the crust? If you're not using butter in a pie crust, use vegetable shortening? Or?
You could use that, or I used coconut oil.
Oh, that would work perfectly.
Yeah, for it cools, it hardens. So you can totally, mash it just how you need it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Second question, what is the most frightened you've ever been?
Oh, God. Several things come to mind. I almost fell off a cliff one time.
Oh, shit.
Thank God my mom never found out about that one.
Yeah.
It was just when me and a couple of friends were like looking for caves on a bluff in Knoxville.
Mm-hmm.
And one of our flashlights started rumbling down the hill. We were running after it and slipped on the leaves. And I ended up literally hanging on a branch with my friend dangling on my leg. So we almost went over. We didn't. Thank God. Would have been about a 50-foot drop.
That's long enough. That's far enough to do some damage.
Another time was we were touring in Fuzzy Sprouts, and we had just crossed back into Georgia from South Carolina, and some cars wiped out in front of us. And it was it was one like an SUV that was pulling a trailer, and several people died.
Jesus
and we
Christ.
pulled over. I said, pull over.
Yeah.
And we pulled over, and I ran out just instinctively to try to help people.
Yeah.
This one man died in my hands. And then I spent the rest of the time with this woman who was paralyzed until the choppers got there. And that one did a number on me.
How old were you?
30s.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't realize how much risk there is involved with just getting in a van every day. And a lot of times the problem is that you spend all your money on good guitars and amplifiers and drums, and the van becomes a thing like, we have to put it in something that will roll.
Yeah.
But does it stop well? I mean, how are the headlights? Well, they come on,
I don't mind not being on the highway. In fact, I realized that I never have liked riding in cars my whole life. I get motion sick. I don't like it. I don't like the smell of it.
Yeah.
I don't like the road. I don't like the asphalt. Give me a bicycle, y'all.
Yeah.
I want to live where it's just bikes.
Yeah.
So I've also had plenty of experience with ghosts. Also, I've been attacked by ghosts.
You got to tell me about that. You can't just say that and not.
Oh, it's a great deal of trauma that I'm still recovering from those experiences.
Where were these ghosts?
It was in a particular place that I had lived. And, footnotes to the story, I got it taken care of.
Yeah.
I did.
How did it manifest
I got the place
itself?
taken care of so that they were not there anymore.
Yeah.
But they were getting on me at night when I was sleeping and would kind of throttle me and choke me, and I would be paralyzed. And it was at least one and probably more that were in this place, and it was just terrifying.
So how do you rid a space of ghosts?
I eventually got it taken care of by hiring somebody who did it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they did it from Dallas, Texas.
Wow.
Yeah. 3 people got together in Dallas, somehow journeyed in the spirit world and took care of the space. Got it done.
Is that expensive?
It was worth a fortune.
Yeah.
I would have gladly paid probably 5 times what I did pay for it to get it done. course, we didn't know if it was going to work.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what's your recourse if you find that this didn't work?
They weren't going to charge me if it didn't work.
Oh, well, that's fair.
Yeah. But it did.
Yeah. Is that a place here in Athens?
Yeah.
There have been a couple houses in Athens that have a reputation.
Yeah, there's more than a couple.
Yeah. What is the thing in your life that you've lost that you regret losing the most?
Oh, man, I sold my 72 Gibson Les Paul. Should never have done that.
Actually, I have a question specifically about musical instruments that's coming up. But why did you sell your Les Paul?
Because I had played Michael Guthrie's like 57 Les Paul or whatever and it was like so much better than mine.
Yeah.
I was like, mine's shit. So I like sold it because I really needed some money to go on a vacation.
Wasn't it a gold top? I remember that guitar.
Yeah.
You didn't sell it. Who'd you sell it to?
I sold it to Midtown Music in Atlanta.
Ugh. So you took a beating on it.
I mean, yeah.
That's unfortunate.
But I've been lucky in other ways.
Where did you go on vacation?
Went to Florida.
Was it a good experience?
Yeah.
Okay.
I needed it.
I mean, experiences
I just
are more
miss
valuable
it now.
You know that I saw this the other day on social media somewhere, and it said, "Look around you. All that stuff used to be money, and all that money used to be time."
That's a good one.
That fucked me up, man.
I'm really sorry about losing a lot of relationships and people in my life, like friends moving away and just being through the whole love relationship now, like a number of times, to put it mildly. And my heart hangs on to every one of those people.
Yeah. Tell me about a time you received an act of kindness from a stranger.
Oh, God. I mean, pretty much every day.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know about from a stranger, but, things come my way that are of benefit to me all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, the universe conspires to help. I think about people coming into my life like, healers. Mm-hmm. Coming into my life, or friends of friends getting in touch, or connecting me with people that I needed. So
yeah,
I don't know if I have a specific story as relates to that.
I think every touring musician has a long list of things that they're grateful for, just because, like, how many times did someone say, "Oh, you can stay at my house," Like,
oh yeah,
thousands of people I owe that debt to, letting me crash on their couch, their floor. And then sometimes they make breakfast, which is amazing.
Right?
Like, you guys didn't have to make pancakes. It's amazing when that happens, because that's like, on tour, man, that's money. You're either going to go out and buy breakfast or you're going to go hungry. And then someone, gets up early and calls into work and makes food. It's like, thank you so much. Like, this is what allows
truly
me to play music. So what's your favorite place to gig?
Wow, do I have to pick a favorite?
You don't have to.
I mean, I don't do much touring anymore, right?
Yeah.
So it's like I kind of got off the road. I sort of hated the road.
It's not for everybody.
Well, I mean, I did it for a long time, but it was messing with me, and I hated the gas. I hated the gasoline. I'm done. I'm like, if I could be done with gasoline tomorrow, and if the world could be done with oil, I would like push that button this second.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, like, our careers as musicians heavily relies on touring.
Yeah.
So I faced a choice, and the environmentalist in me won. Mm-hmm. I just couldn't do it anymore.
Yeah.
However, I'd still love to play.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to pick a favorite in Athens, dude. It's like every place is different. I love all the places in Athens to play.
Yeah.
everywhere from like Hendershots to Flicker, Caledonia, Georgia Theater, 40 Watt, Nowhere Bar.
There's so many places to play here.
Yes.
And yet when people call me from out of town, they're like, hey, where should my band play? I'm like, you're not going to have an easy time breaking in Athens. It's really hard. It's hard to explain to people, but it's just really hard because there's 8 million good bands that already live here.
Yeah.
And have existing relationships with Hendershots and Caledonia and the Foundry. And you're going to have to like find yourself sandwiched into that. You got to just make a deal with a local band and get in, you know?
Yeah. Or do house party.
Yeah.
I love house parties too.
House parties are the best.
Word.
I saw
some of my best memories of playing, to be honest, is house parties.
Yeah. I saw the Wonderland Rangers at Hendershots recently, and I think it's the best thing you've done. With no slight to any of the other bands you've played with, but there's something special about this current band.
Thank you so much.
So good. And Hendershots was a perfect venue for it.
I can't wait to start us airing out some of the new material we're working on too.
Yeah.
I'm really excited.
No, I feel like I know the answer to this next question.
Okay.
But I'm going to ask anyway. Visa and income considerations aside, if you could live anywhere in the world, where would you live?
I'd split my time between Athens and Hawaii. That's been my experience.
I've never been to Hawaii, weirdly. But
I've had a past life there, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
And it speaks to me in this like DNA, beyond DNA level. It's like, it's just so yummy and great. And I love all the elements, you know, there, the water. I love being able to say, oh my God, what are we going to do today? Okay, well, we can go to the beach. You can't say that in Athens, Georgia.
Yeah, it's true.
So, you know, I don't know if it's an endorsement of Hawaii as a place to go. It's not for everybody. It's really far out there.
Yeah. And there's no way to get there without burning a whole lot of fossil fuels.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
True
there is a way to get there, but you'd have to be a really good sailor.
Yeah.
And you'd have to have a very expensive boat. So that's beyond my means.
Well, we're all trying to do better and use burn less fuels. So it's a consideration. I'm pretty, you know, as haphazard as my move to Athens was back in 1991, and I kind of ended up here because I ran out of money once I got here, and I stayed, and I feel pretty lucky that I'm here.
You came to visit Dave, right?
No, I came here alone.
Oh.
I had one acquaintance in Athens, and I just showed up.
And you reminded me that we met your first night here, right?
Yeah, at the downstairs.
Christian Limbach from the Atlanta band Whores reminded me that when he was like just a kid, of course I wasn't much older, I was probably 19, he was like 16. He came here on a sort of fact-finding mission with two of his buddies, and they were like, is this where we want to live? And so they asked me, like, what's Athens like as a place to live? Should we move here? And I was like, you should move here. You know, like, I feel like the Chamber of Commerce should just hire me to go around and talk people into moving to Athens because I love it here.
Did they move here?
He was in Florida, and he moved to Chapel Hill for school, and then there was a terrible car accident. And that whole episode is really good. I can't remember the number episode off the top of my head, but he got into a terrible car accident and then got strung out on opiates and ended up kind of crashing in Atlanta for a long time and finally getting clean. It was a hell of a conversation.
I love that young people who are artistic or musical continue to move to Athens.
I mean, I think that like if we can get a handle on the skyrocketing cost of rent in Athens, we might be able to preserve it as a destination for creative young people.
I hope so, buddy.
Because New York, Austin, San Francisco, the places you used to go are now just so goddamn expensive that people just stay in places like Kalamazoo. Like
same thing's happening here.
Yeah.
I'm afraid I was sitting at the high-low the other day and kind of went off on this woman that I was speaking to at the bar because she was going to move here from somewhere else, and had a wad of cash or something at her disposal because she's a cool person and a hard worker, and she was like, where should I buy a house? And I was like, oh, Austin. My word.
Yeah.
I said, you don't want to move here, it sucks.
Right.
But I mean, how many people do you know now? And I mean, it's all good people, but like, when wealthy people from California and New York are like, oh my God, I can afford a house in Athens, but
I know, man. I mean, I've often thought like one of my dreams is to like find an old high school somewhere and turn it into affordable housing for artists.
Maybe that'll happen with the mall.
Yeah, nothing else is going to happen with the mall these days. They turn the old Walmart into a mega church, which to me is like swapping one form of consumerism for another. I mean, Walmart is in its own way kind of a weird mega church for consumerism, so it doesn't really.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
well said.
Do you have an ideal musical instrument? And if so, do you already own it or not?
Yeah, I think I do. And yes, I do.
Okay.
I love my Fender Jazzmaster.
Is that the one I think I've seen you play that guitar. Is it Sunburst?
It's black.
That's right. Oh, yeah.
It's black with stickers all over it.
That's
and
right.
It's just a frickin' rock machine. It's this tone machine.
Those guitarists have a unique thing with that longer scale, right?
It's a 25.5 scale.
Yeah.
But I mean, I just love old Fenders. And it's a 64, 65.
Wow.
And it happened to be a gift from my mom.
Oh.
As she was, in her last days. It was a wedding present from my mom. So it's like it has that emotional attachment as well.
When we're done here, I'm going to show you the drum set that I worked on when my mom was in hospice.
Yeah, nice.
It was a Gretsch from the early 60s, and it needed so much work. And I would come home from being down there and visiting my mom as she was dying, and I would have all this nervous, restless energy. And this thing, I put 6 coats of lacquer on it and buffed every one of them out, and I did so much work on that set of drums, and that's just like every now and then I think, do I really need this drum kit? I've got 7 drum sets now, or whatever number I'm on right now. I don't even pay attention because it's I don't think it reflects well on me to have all this material stuff, but at the same time, like each of these drum sets does a job, and that one's particularly resonant because it was the one I worked on when my mom was dying.
Yeah. That's got some magic to it.
Yeah, I should play it more.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. I think you already answered this question. Is there a musical instrument that you've lost either to theft or pawn or shoving it along? It's that 72.
It's that dang, 71, 72. Believe it or not, I have an eBay search for like it.
Yeah.
I remember the serial number by heart. If I saw it, I would know it. My dream is for it to somehow come back to me.
Mike Mantione had a Les Paul stolen. That gold top, early 70s gold top stolen right off the stage in Savannah. Big heroin culture in Savannah. And somebody walked in and picked up the guitar and walked out the back door with it. Like they had the whole thing planned.
That's one of my worst fears. I'd never let a guitar sit on stage.
Yeah.
Never left a guitar in the van.
No.
Always take it in.
Do you have insurance?
Yeah.
I have Music Pro. I on all my stuff. Even stuff that doesn't go out on tour.
Yeah.
Because after the ceiling fell in at Chase Street Storage, I lost a bunch of gear. When the ceiling collapsed, all this water fell on my equipment.
I remember that.
A bunch of people lost a lot more than I did. It was bad. Mike Turner from Happy Birthday to Me Records lost a ton of inventory.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were just completely like, this is between you and your insurance company. Mm-hmm. It was the most foul thing. I pulled all my stuff out of there after that. I was like, I think we're done here.
I think that's storage in general.
Yeah. I mean, but they had one job, protect my stuff from the elements, and somehow failed at that job, and it wasn't their fault, according to their lawyers. So it's just like...
Apparently you needed a lesson in non-attachment.
If you could be a guest, if you could play one song with any performer that you love, what would the song be and what would the performer be?
Wow. Holy smokes. I mean, there's a world of possible answers there.
And I'll even open it up even further to say that it doesn't have to be someone who's still alive.
Oh, wow. Oh, God. Doing Helter Skelter with the Beatles would have been pretty good.
You're the second person to say Helter Skelter with the Beatles.
Really?
But he specified one thing. It would have to be Ringo, not Abe Laboriel, the amazing drummer who plays with Paul McCartney now.
Yeah. I mean, just a free-for-all would be cool with that.
Yeah.
I mean, just about anything with Bowie.
What's your favorite David Bowie song?
Probably Heroes.
That's a fucking good one. I love
Fame is really good.
When you hear about how they staged microphones in the big room.
Yeah.
You know, and had each one set to open according to a certain volume level, so it was very intimate and immediate as long as Bowie was singing quietly on the first mic, but when he raised his volume, there were two other microphones staged with noise gates, so that once the level of volume in a room hit a certain point, the second microphone was picking up so much of the room, and then the third mic was even further away and bigger room sound. So when he goes for those big notes, you get a bigger room sound. But when he's singing quietly, you get this intimate whispering in your ear sound, which I think Brian Eno as a recording engineer is just brilliant.
Can't argue with that, man.
Yeah, Tony Visconti, I think, was the other engineer on that session, too.
I just Facebooked this like last night, actually, because I was on my computer and ran across a mix that I had done, which was like probably the 18th mix or something that I've tried to do a version of that song. And this one that I had completely forgotten that I had done this version in this mix. And I listened to it and I was like, oh, wow. I might be able to share that one.
Yeah,
it was all right enough that my vocal take was okay.
Could I take a run at mixing it? Would you be okay with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Last question.
All right.
If you could to imagine a taxi that will go anywhere in time or space in your lifetime, or beyond, and you got into the taxi and said to the taxi driver, "Hey man, take me home." Where is home?
That's funny you mentioned that, because I often have this feeling like I wish I could go back to certain times in my life.
Yeah.
And most of it is centered around taking what I know now into the past to sort out issues that were happening that I didn't have a solution for then.
Right.
Like helping my folks. So I often think about that, and I think about going back in time to high school and actually asking the girls I had a crush on to a date or something like that,
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a whole bunch of like unrequited stuff that I never acted upon because I was too shy.
Yeah, a lot of unfinished business.
Yeah, but I mean, and wouldn't we all like to time travel,
But where, when you think of sort of the thoughts of home, is there a time in your life where you felt most realized or comfortable? Or
my early childhood was very idyllic.
Yeah,
and that would have been in Carlisle, Massachusetts.
Yeah.
We had an old farmhouse that was built in 1729.
Wow.
Yeah, and the community was real sweet. It was diverse. There was a lot of Europeans there, and we had good friends, and they would come over and we would go to their place, and it just had a good feel. Of course, that was like the late 60s, early 70s. So it was just a different time.
Yeah.
Very different time.
Was it that different, though? Like every now and then I look at the news and I feel like I'm watching the prelude to the Watergate hearings all over again.
Yeah, for sure. So, yeah, there's similarities, but
yeah.
I mean, if I say it's a different time, it's also, before I grew up and became aware that there were bad things in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my parents knew, you know, but I, you know, they sheltered me from the horrors for a long time and until it started creeping in on me, you know, and I guess that's how you lose your innocence. Right. But I can think back to a time that was just lovely.
Yeah.
And even like we would get 2 feet of snow and I would go out and play in the snow and dig tunnels in the snow.
We didn't have that where I grew up.
I didn't care. I didn't care about the cold.
Yeah.
You know, we didn't. It was, yeah.
Well, man, this has been great. I'm really grateful for you taking the time to do this.
You as well.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
You guys should definitely see Timi's band, the Wonderland Rangers. They're like an unbelievable band.
Man, thanks for the plug.
Yeah, I felt like this is the band that should have played at the Fillmore for our time, you know, like it's warm and it's there's a lot of love in the performance and a lot of excitement, and it's my favorite thing you've done, and I really love it. So I'm glad you're doing it.
Can't thank you enough for that.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, and thanks for doing what you're doing here. I believe in you.
I started this because I felt like there was a need, and then like, you know, jump in the net will find you.
Yeah.
Well, now the net is just chasing me around.
Nice.
Like every time I have a moment of doubt, like I get another email like, this is so important to me and you saved my life. And I'm like, I'm so excited about how well it's going. And
I'm all about it, man. And let's take it to the streets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And people are welcome to get in touch with me too. And if they want to, they can get, yeah, if it's okay with you, they can go through you, or you can find me on Facebook. It's easy to find on Facebook.
Well, I'll put contact information in the show notes. So Tim does massage and other forms of healing. If you're having struggles manifesting, we're reconciling your physical and your emotional life. I think that seeing Tim could be a real boon to your sense of well-being and ability to kind of grow as a person. So you should definitely check into it.
And I work at a distance as well.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
I don't know how it works, but it does. Anyway, thanks, buddy. Love you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, that's it for episode 42. Thanks for listening. Hey, if you get a chance, check out the song explications I'm doing. They come out on Wednesday, and I just go bit by bit through a song that I love, and I talk about why I love it. If you're into music at all, like obsessively like I am, I think you might enjoy it. Otherwise, you know, regular interview episodes are always going to come out at Saturday on midnight, and eventually, of course, the song explications are going to move behind the paywall for people who pay the $10 a month Patreon fee to subscribe. If you want to check into that, go to patreon.com/crashandride. There's a $5 level where you're just being a super nice person and throwing me $5 a month so I can buy coffee. And then $10 a month gets you the subscription to the song explications, and it's a lot of fun. All right, thanks to our erstwhile producer, Jake Kreger. Jake sends me show notes after every show to help me make the show better, so if it's better now than it was the first time you heard it, that's all on Jake. Thanks, Jake. Also, thanks to Gene Wolflick and the Powder Room. All the music you hear on Crash and Ride is from the band The Powder Room. You can hear more of their music on Bandcamp at thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. I played with that band for a couple years. The music at the sort of halftime break where I do the suicide prevention announcements, the music under that is me playing with the Powder Room, but everything else is from their first album, Curtains, which you can hear, like I said, on Bandcamp at thepowderroom.bandcamp.com. They're a great band. Throw them a few bucks. Download those records. It's worth your time. Thanks also to Heil Audio for giving me such a great deal on those 2 PR40 microphones. If you're looking to upgrade the microphones for your podcast, you could do a lot worse than the Heil PR40. Back when I was a studio engineer, I used them all the time on snare drum, kick drum, and bass cabinet. Turns out they're a great broadcast microphone too. Check out the Heil PR40. Okay, that's all for this week. So until we meet again, take care of yourself. Be kind to yourself. Ask for help if you need it. Go see live music. Support your favorite band. And remember, loud guitars save lives.